you can change color. Can we find green? Oh, I think it matches. So, hi everyone. If you're watching this, that means that I've built enough courage to upload this on YouTube, but also I just had enough of it because I need to discuss books that I'm reading and I have no one in real life to discuss them with. And I get rationally angry when I go online and try to discuss it in comments with other people because everyone gets everything wrong. That's a good introduction, that will do. Anyway, as you might have noticed if you have a calendar, as you might know, we are in autumn season, so it's officially a season. That means, for me personally, that I am rereading Twilight. Look at this. Oh my god. I hope it's upside down, not upside down. So pretty. I was so excited when I bought it because I felt like I can revisit my youth. I really like this white and red edition. It contains the original saga with original 4 books of the series: Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Down, and it has also 2 additional materials: the short Second Life of Bree Tanner, which I have not read, and Midnight Sun, obviously. Yeah, I've read like this much. I read Twilight, I read New Moon, and I started reading Eclipse, but then I got very much bored and I stopped reading Twilight somewhere. They were somewhere in the mountain. They were already somewhere in the mountain hiding from Victoria. That was where I said enough is enough. This season, I'm planning to revisit all of these books again because I have nothing to do with my life. So, yeah. And while I started rereading them, oh my god, let me get them out of the case. So, when I started rereading them, I read already Twilight. It is as magnificent and cringy as I remember. And while I was reading Twilight, I started discussing it with people in my real life, with my family, with my friends, and apparently TikTok started listening, and that's why it started giving me videos on the topic. Or maybe because I'm not that original and everyone else is also reading Twilight at the moment, and that's why it's a hot topic. I don't know. I'm not so sure. TikTok advised me the video that let me know that there is a book that somehow escaped my knowledge. I don't know why, but I had no clue that this book exists. So I'm not the most hardcore Twilight fan because even though Twilight came out in 2005, I was too busy with my stuff in my own high school and with university applications, so I have not read it at the moment. The first time when I was introduced to Twilight was already 2009, and I was already 18 at the moment. I was not that involved in all this Team Edward, Team Jacob shenanigans, but I was also never that opposed to Twilight. I was never on this hate Twilight train. That's why I don't feel like a hypocrite making this video. Anyhow, there is a book that I have not read. Apparently, it's a 10th anniversary edition of the book. Stephenie really likes anniversaries of her book. For 5th anniversary of the book, she gave us Second Life of Bree Tanner, and for 10th anniversary, she gave us Life and Death. She basically provided a gender swap of all the characters. Who asked for this? No one. No one asked for this. For 15th anniversary, she gave us Midnight Sun. This year is actually 20th anniversary. I have not see any news, any updates. I've checked her website just a few hours ago, and I haven't seen anything except for this new flowery edition of Twilight. So maybe that's all the news that we're gonna get. I would take any book from Stephenie. At this point, I would take anything. I would even take new book about Renesmee. I would take any abomination. I'm not even joking. The new book, we can see that it's the classic black cover. This is how I remember my very first edition of Twilight. I gotta say, I've seen this cover before, but I've never realized that this is Life and Death. I've seen this cover with this green apple, but for some reason I thought that this green apple is for Midnight Sun because, you know, Bella has her red apple and Edward has his green apple. That's what I thought. But no. Edward has a pomegranate because he's hated, brings Persephone into his hell. I haven't even read the book yet, but I'm pretty sure there will be something about that. So can we please, real quick, talk about the difference in size? So this is basically the same story, right? This is the Bella's version of the story, and this is Edward's version of the story. And just look at the difference in size. When I first saw it, I thought to myself, Edward, you're a yapper. It's just almost twice as big as Bella's perspective. So I'm kind of curious to see how much he has to say. One of the first things that I've done when I've bought this book, so the first thing that I've done, I took it and I compared size. And all I can say that Beau is a male counterpart of Bella. He is slightly more yappy than Bella, but still, by far not as yappy as Edward. Edward just couldn't stop. So in the very beginning of the book, Stephenie explains why she decided to write this specific book. And she explained what I already told you, that for the main anniversaries, 5th anniversary, 10th anniversary, 15th anniversary, she provides a book. And she starts with an apology because she says, I know that you're waiting for Midnight Sun. Well, it's not ready yet because I just need a little bit more time. So instead of giving the audience what they want, given the Midnight Sun, she decides that she will give a second best option and give us Life and Death. She specifically says that she doesn't have enough time to write a novel. But she says, remember how I said there was no time? Fortunately, this project was not only fun, but also really fast and easy. I'm not quite convinced that this is a good characteristics of the book if the author says that I didn't have time to write a whole novel, but this one was fast and easy. I not fully convinced that it screams quality. Just my opinion, though. Stephenie provides the reason. She says specifically that Belle has always gotten a lot of censure for getting rescued on multiple occasions, and people have complained about her being a typical damsel in distress. My answer to that has always been that Bella is a human in distress, a normal human being surrounded on all sides by people who are basically superheroes and supervillains. She is also being criticized for being too consumed with her love interest, as if that's somehow just a girl thing. I'm afraid it is. But I've always maintained that it would have made no difference if the human were male and the vampire female. It's still the same story. Gender and species aside, Twilight has always been a story about the magic and obsession and frenzy of first love. So just a point here. I don't quite remember Bella ever being criticized for being damsel in distress. I'm gonna be honest. As I mentioned, I was not a die-hard fan. I was already a little bit too old. I don't really remember people discussing Bella being damsel in distress. I remember that Bella was getting a lot of criticism for once being bland, and second of all, for being not like other girls. Given the time period 2005, 2000s was a dawn of not like other girls, pick me girls, all the girls who were trying to position themselves that they're just not like everyone else. All other girls, they're stupid with their stupid interests. You know who not like other girls are. I don't need to explain it to you. So, I remember Bella being criticized for that. I'm not really sure that that was ever a point of conversation that Bella is being damsel in distress who needs saving. Bella lives in a world of vampires and werewolves, and therefore, because of her involvement with all supernatural, she just happens to end up in situations that are dangerous for her life because of the supernatural element. I'm not quite sure that this was at any point needed additional discussion. Just my opinion. Bella was criticized for being this clumsy, awkward, incompetent teenager who cannot stand for herself. She constantly needs to be rescued because of the way you wrote her. Constantly get herself in trouble, her constantly falling down, constantly tripping over things, her being hit by a van, her being attacked in Port Angeles. She just a magnet for trouble. But this is how you wrote her. It's not necessarily that she's been a damsel in distress. It's just how you created this character. I don't think that Stephenie pulled this argument out of thin air. I believe that somebody probably voiced the argument. I have a feeling that it's a little bit of strawman fallacy here happening, because even if someone said that Bella is being a damsel in distress, I'm not fully convinced that the argument here is that all women are damsels in distress. The criticism, I feel like, was very much specific for Bella. I'm not quite sure that it was ever connected to her gender. So I feel like Stephenie is a little bit strawmanning here, and she takes this criticism that Bella is a damsel in distress and drags it a little bit in direction that women are damsels in distress, and tries to argue with this point that it's not women, it's human in distress, and argues with this point that no one even raised. But let's just continue. I'm not sure the gender swap solves the issues that were raised with Bella and her personality and how she behaves and how she's been a magnet for troubles. I'm not quite convinced that if Bella was a boy, somehow she would not get the same criticism. Whatever point Stephenie picks to argue, that's the battle that she chose herself. And I'm not quite sure she's winning this battle. I'm gonna be honest. The main point being that it would have made no difference if the human were male and the vampire female. It's still the same story. And I'm not quite convinced that she was successful in proving this line, but let's give it a chance, right? Basically, Stephenie created a whole universe where all genders are swapped, for one big exception, an exception being Charlie and Renee. Now, Stephenie understands her limitations. She's fully aware who is the main character of her story and who is the untouchable one. She knows exactly where the angry mob is waiting. She knows that Charlie is untouchable and she cannot touch Charlie. Charlie should remain. Now, she provides a rationale for her decision, which honestly doesn't really make any sense to me. She says that here is the reason for that. Beau was born in 1997. It was a rare thing for a father to get primary custody of a child in those days, even more so when the child was just a baby. Most likely, the mother would have had to be proven unfit in some way. I have really hard time believing that any judge of that time, or even now, would give a child to a transient unemployed father over a mother with a steady job and strong ties to a community. Basically saying that it would be unrealistic because in a universe that revolves around vampires, werewolves, and other magical things, realism is what we're looking for. You know, a child being left with a father, is that where we draw the line? Sure, Jen.
Sure, Jan.
Anyway, Stephenie further provides percentages of changes that she made to the story. Definitely not because Beau is a man. Definitely not because now story makes literally no sense. Not because of that. Fine. 5% of changes she made because Beau is a boy. But all other changes, all other 95%, oof, our math queen attributes to literally anything else. One of the things that personally triggered was this quote. The biggest variations are that he is more OCD. I just hate when people say, I'm just a little bit ADHD, I'm just a little bit autistic, I'm just a little bit OCD, I'm just a little bit schizophrenic. You cannot be a little bit, it's a real medical diagnosis. So I was really, really aware of this diagnosis of Beau, and I was really looking in the book where his OCD manifests, and spoiler alert, it doesn't. Once Beau alphabetized all cleaning adhesives in a bathroom, that was about it. That was just all of it, all the OCD. It's giving Courtney.
If somebody says, I'm crazy, I'm meticulous, I'm clean, neurotic, thank you.
And also, 5% of changes were because Beau's personality developed just slightly different than Bella. And my question would be, why? If gender makes no sense, then why? If gender makes no difference, why? She never elaborates why, and it feels like important points. She just glosses over it, and I don't really understand why she even mentions it, why she would even provide all these percentages. You could just write that I've changed some things because it didn't make sense otherwise. I feel like justification of the changes did more damages. Anyway, let's see if the story is indeed absolutely the same, even if you completely swap all genders. The story starts so eerily similar to Twilight that it begs the question, do I really need to read this? I think I've got it. Everything is absolutely the same except for one small scene in the airport where Beau, being his clumsy self, hits the person by accident and they have a small argument, but then the man who was hit drops it because he notices that Beau is with his father, who is a cop, and that's all of it. And you might ask, why is this scene here? Because Stephenie is planting seeds for her future changes. It's all good, calm down. Then it's pretty much all the same. Beau arrives to school, he's worried that kids will not like him. Spoiler alert, everyone likes him. He meets Erica, Jeremy, Michaela, and Alan, I believe. So the dynamic is exactly the same. Everything is absolutely the same. He meets exactly the same people. They're just wearing wigs, basically. Eric and Michaela have a crush on Beau because he's a tall boy, and apparently that's enough. And everyone wants to be friends with Beau because even though he gives no reason for people to feel like they want to be friends, he's a new one in the school. I believe that it's mentioned that school is very small. It's around 80 students or something like this. So he's obviously a novelty. So everyone wants to be friends with him, apparently. Then Beau meets Cullens, Royal, Eleanor, Jessamine, Archie, and obviously Edythe. By the way, it's specified that it's not Edythe, but Edythe. I'm not sure if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but it is specified in the book how you should spell this name. In the original Twilight story, Bella keeps gushing how attractive they all are, how girls look like models, how boys are so tall and strong and attractive. So they are attractive, but there is nothing that peculiar about them because the whole shtick of Cullens that they want to blend in and to fit in the surroundings so they can stay longer in the same area. They don't have to travel that often and change locations all the time. That's why they go to school. They can stay longer in the same area and go to college, so they need to be inconspicuous, not attract too much attention. I invite you to be the judge, whether it's that peculiar. Royal had his hand casually in the hip of the really tall girl with the dark curly hair who looked like she was just as familiar with the weight room as he was. He had to be a good 2 inches taller than even I was, but he only had a half an inch on her. Though he was obviously pretty sure of himself, I was still kind of surprised he felt comfortable doing that. Not that she wasn't hot, she was super mega hot, but not approachable. Like not even The Rock would dare to whistle at her, if you know what I mean. No, we don't. Also in other scene, Eleanor is being flexing her muscles in front of everyone. She is just like Emmett, but wearing a wig. I know when I will be editing this video, I will be adding characters here and I will be putting wigs on them. But literally, that was exactly my feeling while I was reading this scene, that it's Emmett in a wig. It's like Emmett cosplaying a girl, poorly cosplaying, like a parody. It's not me being misogynistic, by the way. It's Stephenie being kind of weird. First things first. If we are talking about realism, it was a very important point why we decided to leave Charlie as Charlie and Renee as Renee. If we are talking about time periods, in 2005, there is no way on this green earth that girl described like Eleanor wouldn't get bullied. Girl that tall wouldn't be bullied in a high school. As a tall girl myself, I can guarantee that she would be bullied brutally just because she is different. 2000s, in general, girls were supposed to be as small as it possibly gets. They were supposed to be petite, short, skinny, tiny. Anyone who would be tall or have some muscles, they would be considered not conventionally attractive. And I'm not saying that tall, muscular women are not attractive. I'm just saying that back in 2000s, high schoolers wouldn't be that cool with that. Even nowadays, I'm not that sure that they would be cool with that. Maybe if Eleanor was playing sports, being a social butterfly, maybe that kids bully you for literally anything that stands out. And Stephenie Meyer fully confirms my point by creating Edythe the way she created Edythe. The main character, the main love interest, is a petite, tiny, small, skinny girl. She made her the exact type the exact ideal of female beauty back in 2000s. I'd never seen so much of her skin, her pale arms, her slim shoulders, the fragile-looking twigs of her collarbones, the vulnerable hollows above them, the swan-like column of her neck, the gentle swell of her breasts, and the ribs I could nearly count under the thin cotton. He could see her ribs under the t-shirt. You realize how skinny the girl was supposed to be. So she is short, extremely skinny. And my question is, why is that, Stephenie? Because Edward, he's a little bit shorter than his brothers. Sure, he's a little bit smaller than his brothers, but he is still very much tall, muscular, and strong. Why a female counterparts of Emmett and Jasper are very tall and muscular girls? Why Edythe is all of a sudden a small, skinny, and fragile girl? I honestly wouldn't mind that much if Edythe was tall and muscular, or more like Robert Pattinson in a way. At least that would be fitting in the whole picture. I will not talk about all the events in the book because they are exactly the same. All the conversation, word by word, everything happens the same way, including the van almost hitting Beau and Edythe saving him. Two important things that I want to discuss here. First, being Beaufort's relationship with his father. Charlie is being very famously known for not having a lot of connection with Bella. He loves her, clearly, but they don't have a lot of common interests. He doesn't spend that much time with her. Bella characterizes it by saying that he's also an introvert and he doesn't hover. I always believed that that's because he just doesn't really know her and she's a girl. But you are telling me that Charlie didn't even try to invite Beau to go fishing or watch sports. It's such an important point of bonding between men, and I felt like there was always this explanation for the relationship between Charlie and Bella because she's a teenage girl and he just feels awkward around teenage girl because he doesn't know anything about teenage girl. They are not living together under the same roof. He doesn't know how to behave around her and he doesn't want to make her feel uncomfortable. It's awkward because they're a different gender. This situation, that wouldn't be that awkward in my personal opinion. I honestly cannot see any reason why Charlie wouldn't bond with Beau. And the only reason that I can find for this is that Charlie knows Beau so well that he already knows that none of his own interests would interest Beau, but not because Beau is a girl, but because he knows Beau so well and knows that Beau will just say no to all of this. I wish we sacrificed a little bit of realism and made Charlie maybe Carly, because how else would you explain their lack of communication? The other thing that I don't quite understand is Beau being that popular in school. Bella also receives a lot of criticism for being unrealistically popular too, but there is a background. She comes to a new school with a very limited group of students. They all know each other for ages, and she's a novelty. She's a new girl, and she's attractive. That's all that's required. She has all girls' interests. She acts like your typical girl. She's a good student. She likes to read. She cleans the house. She likes to cook. She goes shopping from time to time. She goes to the movies. She has all the classic girls' activities. She doesn't do anything outstanding, but also she doesn't do anything that would put her in a category that she had some weird interest. She even comments this about herself, that she's so ordinary, she's so boring, she's so like every other girl on the planet. She's just normal girl who is attractive and who is new. No one remembers her awkward stage. That's why she's so popular among boys, and that's why even girls, they want to talk to her. So her popularity kind of makes sense. Beau's popularity makes literally no sense because boys' relationship works slightly different. There is a certain hierarchy that you need to fit in. Either need to be very good at sports, for example, be very charismatic, be a jokester, be extremely sociable, for example, very kind and very helpful. Beau is none of those things. He doesn't play sports because he's super clumsy. He doesn't even watch sports. He is a good student, but not that good of a student to help others out. He is very socially awkward. He cannot really maintain conversation. He tries to make jokes, but no one understands them. He is tall. That's the one thing. He's very tall, and it's commented that he is very, very attractive. Now, it's heavily hinted throughout the book that Bella doesn't really see herself the way other people see her. She suffers from low self-esteem, and she doesn't even understand how attractive she is to other people, which is kind of sad. Most people had a chance to develop self-esteem and self-awareness, understand their own worth and value, but not Bella. She believes she's not good and keeps wondering how the hell she got herself with Edward. She ends up marrying him, her first teenage crush. In this story, it ends well, arguably, but usually this case scenarios, it's a scenario for domestic use. It doesn't go that well in real life. At some point, Edythe comments that Beau has 10 admirers in school. 10 in a school where there are 80 students. There are 10 girls who fall for Beau. What a success rate. What made him that successful? I'm not quite convinced. I don't really understand that. And so Beau is a good student. He allegedly suffers from OCD. He likes cleaning the house. And what else? Beau is boring, that's all that I'm saying. I once went on a date with a guy who was super attractive. After 2 hours of this date, I was really contemplating how I can fake or even cause an emergency so I just can leave. Attractiveness is not all of it. Considering the fact that Beau is so boring, I really don't understand how so many people falling for him. He's boring, he's a snooze fest. I don't really understand why girls would fall for him, but also I don't really understand why boys would want to be friends with him. They have nothing to talk to him about. There are no common interests. What they're even discussing when they go to La Push, it gets slightly better because when he arrives to La Push, it happens right after a biology lesson when they were checking the blood type, and just like Bella, Beau faints. When he arrives to La Push, boys kind of bully him for this, and I was like, yeah, this is good. This is good stuff. I'm not saying that Beau should be bullied. I'm just saying that this is realistic. This is how boys react. If you do something silly, you will be laughed at. I kind of wish that Stephenie would go with that. Beau is not being popular in school. He's being tolerated. He doesn't have anything to be bullied for. And also his dad is a cop. No one wants to be his friend. But no one wants to get on his bad side. I wish she went with this dynamic because it just seems more realistic to me. But, you know. Anyway, La Push, baby.
La Push, baby. It's La Push.
He meets kids from reservation, Jules. When I was reading the description, I genuinely tried imagining a new character and painting a girl instead of just imagining Jacob in the wig. But then she started to name her interest and immediately is Jacob in a wig. I don't really understand why Stephenie was so afraid to add any changes and deviate slightly from the story. Why she just needed to drag their old interests to their new gender-swapped persona. I like the consistency in story. So far, everyone is just the original actors wearing the wig and cosplaying the opposite gender. Only added that I cannot imagine as Robert Pattinson in a wig. Just as an original story, Jules tell Beau about cold ones, and it's sent him spiraling and contemplating all the information that he already gets about supernatural activities that and supernatural powers that Edythe demonstrated. Later that night, Beau had a dream about Edythe, which was weirdly sensual. I just leave it at that. It just, apparently that's one of the changes that were made because Beau is a boy and he has more sexual fantasies than apparently girls have. Beau researches vampires and he has the same findings that Bella, and he comes to the same conclusions that whatever. He goes to visit Port Angeles with boys, with Jeremy and Alan. Boys go to choose corsages for the dance. Which, Stephenie, for real, boys choosing corsages for a dance, come on. I had such a hard time imagining that boys would go to another town to choose some flowers for their costumes for a dance. Creator of the TikTok that I've seen that told me that this book exists. Someone asked the creator how did Stephenie manage to gender swap the scene where Edward saves Bella from the dark alley where guys were going to SA her. And I thought, yeah, this is a really good question. And then I closed the TikTok and went and bought this book. And I was really waiting for this scene because I was curious, how can you gender swap it? It's not like the situation like this, say, cannot happen to a boy, but this specific scenario is very much specific for girls. So I was curious, and I gotta say, Stephenie Meyer, she did not disappoint. Remember this earlier scene in the airport where Beaufort accidentally hit the guy? They had this argument, but then the guy dropped it because Beau was with his father, the cop. So this scene, it was not just an accident. Stephenie was planting seeds for her gender swaps in the future. Beaufort goes to a dark alley. He stumbles into the same guy who are doing some fishy business, and he becomes an eyewitness. And the guy immediately recognizes Beau. He remembers him from this airport scene. And he also remembers that Beau was accompanied by a cop. So he immediately assumes that Beau is a cop himself. When Beau tries to clarify that he is no cop, he is the son of the cop, the guy says, oh, whatever. And he is going to get rid of Beau because Beau is an eyewitness, which fair enough. I'm just saying that it's realistic. So Edythe obviously rescues Beau the same way Edward rescued Bella, and then she brings him to a restaurant. And this is where the shit gets weird. What I mean by that shit gets weird, is that Edward is specifically written as a character who was born in a different century. Bella comments that he speaks a little bit peculiar. He uses words and phrases that are not used nowadays. And sometimes his mannerism looks like it's from old movies, like he was born in a different century, because that's the truth. Edward's behavior in restaurant is not that weird. He holds the door for Bella, he lets her in, he gives some money to the waiter so they can get a better table, he pays for the meal, he's been a gentleman. That's just all hints that he is slightly from a different era, slightly from a different time, and he is the product of his time. So now Edythe is doing that all the same thing, and it's kind of weird because the whole point is Edward is doing these things because he remembers how it was done back in his youth, back when he was a human being. It's his muscle memory, it's his habits. Edythe wouldn't have these habits, she wouldn't have these muscle memories because she was a girl in her previous life. It's not like she was a boy in her previous life, she was a girl. And back in the time when she was a human being, women have much more passive role. Beau tries to hold the door for her, and he's been a gentleman, but she kind of looks at him weird, and I was like, why? I would elaborate in this direction. The whole point of this scene was to demonstrate how Edward is from a different time. You can show the same thing with Edythe. She stands in front of the door and looks expectantly at Beaufort, waiting for him to open the door for her. When she comes to the table, she stands next to the chair because she waits for him to hold the chair for her. So you can lean further in the direction that she has some old-fashioned habits because this is how things were done when she was younger. Because otherwise it doesn't really make sense. I was hoping that there will be maybe some explanation later on, but it was never there. The commentary never arrived. Why Edythe, who was born in the period where women were in much passive role, now takes such an active and more masculine position. The rest is absolutely the same. Beau eats, Edythe pays, they drive home, they have a discussion. Beau confesses that he found out that Edythe is a vampire. She confirms it, all the same. But one thing, I was kicking my legs. Is this expression? Hold on, let me check. Oh yeah, look at me go, kicking my leg in frustration, because there is one specific sentence in the Twilight book that I love the most. It's my favorite sentence in the whole Twilight saga, and I was really, really, really expecting it from Beau's perspective. And I'm just gonna read it for you. About 3 things I was absolutely positive. First, Edward was a vampire. Second, there was a part of him, and I didn't know how potent that part might be, that thirsted for my blood. And third, I was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him. What a sentence! Literally the best sentence of the entire saga. So when I was waiting for Beau to make a similar confession how much he's in love with Edythe, what I got, there were a few things I knew for sure. For one, Edythe was an actual vampire. For another, there was a part of her that saw me as food. But in the end, none of that mattered. All that mattered was that I loved her more than I'd ever imagined it was possible to love anything. She was everything I wanted, the only thing I would ever want. I don't know why, but I feel like I've been robbed of my last joy. I don't like it. The next day they go to the Meadow. Edythe shows herself in all her shiny, sparkly glory, and I just need to read you this part. I know I do a lot of reading, but I hope you like my reading voice. Going back to the idea that genders don't really matter, how would you explain this shit? Climb on my back. I blinked. Huh? Don't be a coward, Beau. I promise this won't hurt. She stood there, waiting, with her back toward me, totally serious. Edythe, I mean, how? She spun back to me, one eyebrow raised. Surely you're familiar with the concept of a piggyback ride? I shrugged. Sure, but what's the problem then? Well, you're so small. I'm not saying you are not strong enough, obviously, but how would I fit? I looked at my 2 long legs and then back to her delicate frame. She turned her back to me again. Trust me, feeling like the stupidest, most awkward person in all of the history, I hesitantly put my arms around her neck. Come on, she said impatiently. She reached back with one hand and grabbed my legs, yanking me knee up past her hip. Whoa. But she already had my other leg, and instead of toppling backward, she easily supported my weight. She moved my legs into position around her waist. My face was burning, and I knew I must look like gorilla on a greyhound. I was laughing and cringing and laughing. Wouldn't you wish, Stephenie, that you made Edythe just a little bit more like Eleanor? Was it that necessary to create her this small, fragile, petite little girl with clavicles and ribs poking? Maybe her being a little bit taller and a little bit more muscular would make this scene a little bit less awkward. I'm not that sure. Anyway, they return home. Edythe spends the night at Beau's bedroom, the same way that Edward spends the night at Bella's room. Now they have very weird sex discussion. Bella and Edward discusses sex to a much less extent. They don't even mention word sex in Twilight, but they're much more explicit in Life and Death. Is it again just because Beau is a boy? And I just want to mention here all conversations, all kissing scenes that they have between Beau and Edythe. It feels much more awkward than kissing scenes between Bella and Edward. I've tried to put a pin to it and understand why. It feels just more awkward to me, including this conversation about sex. It all leaves kind of a bad taste in my mouth. Don't get me wrong, Bella is also constantly pushes Edward's boundaries and he constantly had to say no to her. But when Beau is pushing Edythe's boundaries, it somehow feels slightly different when she constantly has to say that he's moving too fast. When it comes from a girl, for some reason, it has slightly different meaning. I was trying to figure out if it's just me being misogynistic, why I felt more okay when Bella was doing the same things, but now when Beau is doing this to a girl, I don't feel the same thing, and I feel like it's slightly more icky, but I feel like I understood why. I think the reason was that when Bella was pushing Edward's boundaries, it was because she was so in love in the moment that she was kind of forgetting that she is kissing a vampire. She is kissing someone who can kill her. She was forgetting that she is not kissing another human being. It's the same for Beau. If you leave it at that, in case of Bella, it leaves her with a human man who's objectively taller, bigger, and stronger than her. And in case of Beau, it leaves him with a smaller, more fragile, delicate girl. Him being more assertive feels slightly different than Bella's being more assertive. You know, pushing boundaries is not very well. If your partner had to tell you constantly, repeatedly that you're moving too fast, you're doing too much, slow down, you're doing something wrong, obviously. Maybe this thought should not even be there, regardless of gender, just like Stephenie wanted. But it feels different. I'm just saying that I had this feeling when I was reading about Bella, I was not feeling icky. And with Beau and Edythe, I was feeling icky. Anyway, they visit Edythe's family where they meet the Cullens, Esme and Carlisle, which are obviously Ernest and Corinne. Esme's gender swap makes no sense. Esme is a stereotypical housewife, a mother of the family. She's a product of her time. In her time, when she was still a human being, it was very much normal for women not to have any career ambitions, not to bother with education. They were supposed to become a housewife, to take care of the family, to take care of the children, and that's what she wants to be. She has a very caring personality and she enjoys being stay-at-home mom. Ernest being stay-at-home dad doesn't really give the same vibe. It just doesn't really make sense. It's just weird. That will be a topic for discussion, especially in a small community. Stephenie applied some logic when she was talking about Charlie and Renee that would be unrealistic. I will not drop it. That was a ridiculous argument to make. She have not for a second thought that making Carlisle a woman will distort his storyline. One of the biggest personality traits of Carlisle is that he is a doctor. Centuries of experience. He is a super doctor. A woman in the 15th century, how would you assume she would get any form of education? Women getting education, being allowed in an operation room, is very recent development of things. Moreover, if you think about when she was turned, she would even have troubles traveling simply without a chaperone. She would be seen either as a fallen woman, peasant, or a working class woman, but she would never be allowed in university. She would not be allowed in high society. She would not be as polished. I feel like the trajectory of her life will be much more different because she would be forced to live at night, to live at some dumps, to not communicate with people properly, just because you've made her a woman. I don't really see any reason for changing Carlisle and Esme. You could just leave parents alone. You could, the same logic that you use for Charlie and Renee. And it's also not that Carlisle turned Edward because he wanted a son specifically. He just wanted not to be lonely, and Edward was dying. Carlisle saw the opportunity to not only to get a family member, but also to save the life. He could apply exactly the same logic to Edythe and get himself a daughter. Anyway, later on they go to the field, they play the ball, the famous supermassive black hole scene, and where they encounter Black Eyed Peas trio, Joss, Victor, and Laurent. But it's all the same. Joss gets the sniff of Beau's scent. She wants to eat him immediately, and they start the runaway project. It's all the same. Beau returns home. Beau yells at Charlie. He causes a scene, and then he moves to Phoenix with Archie and Jessamine, and together they stay at the hotel room. So it's all the same. Except, as far as I remember in Twilight, Bella doesn't really interact that much with Alice and Jasper. They work as her bodyguard. They don't really talk too much. Bella was much more lonelier in this moment, left much more to her own devices, and there was no bonding scenes between her and Alice yet. Archie bonds with Beau. He tries to talk to him, and he tells him that he already saw him as his best friend. He also tells him a lot about transformation. He tells him a lot about his own story, and that should have made me more suspicious why these changes are there. But at this point, I was already so sick and tired of this book. I just wanted to finish. I didn't really pay attention to this to these changes. Also, Stephenie further disarmed my suspicions by repeating the scene with this call from mom, when in reality it's Joss calling and pretending that he holds Beau's mom hostage and basically blackmails Beau into leaving Cullens and coming to ballet studio. She repeated this scene word by word. The call, they leave the hotel, they go to the airport to meet with other Cullens. They're waiting in the airport, and I have not even realized that Stephenie changed a little bit the scene. Apparently, Bella left with 20 minutes before Edward's arrival. Beau left with 25 minutes before Edythe's arrival. Beau had another 5 minutes to make his escape, and apparently these 5 minutes changed everything. So Beau gets out of the airport, gets on a taxi, gender reversed taxi driver gets him to the house of his mother, and then he gets to the ballet studio where he meets with Joss. He realizes that there is no mother inside. The mother is safe. He heroically sacrifices himself, ready to die. Joss starts torturing him on camera. At this moment, I started to notice that Joss is causing so much more damage, more injuries to Beau. Cullens arrive, they kill Joss, they try to save Beaufort, and Edythe tries to suck out venom just like Edward did to Bella. That's where the story deviates because Archie / Alice, whoever, tells the following. "We got here too late. You can see it," Corinne said in a more subdued voice. "There are only 2 futures left, Corinne. He survives as one of us, or Edythe kills him trying to stop it from happening." So basically, they arrived too late. Because of this 5 minutes, the whole storyline changed. The venom already started affecting him to a much greater extent than it affected Bella. So now they had to make a choice. Either they let Beau die or fully transform him as a vampire. And he chooses to be transformed into a vampire, and he becomes a vampire. So, well done, Stephenie. I didn't expect that. She really lulled all my suspicions, and I was not paying attention to what I was reading. The book was so similar in writing. I really didn't expect such a major plot twist, misdirect, however you want to call it. So, Beau becomes a vampire. He gets his 101 how to be a vampire, receives a short story of Volturi family and all the things that he needs to be aware of. We're left just with 2 scenes, which are new scenes because they were not in original storyline, because in original storyline, obviously Bella survived for another tortures. So the first of these 2 scenes is obviously a funeral scene. Beau was turned into a vampire, therefore human Beau needs to die. They were not even going to tell parents, which is kind of sad because it was kind of soothing how Bella's fate remained kind of ambiguous in the original Twilight saga. At least as far as I remember, they have not told Renee what happened to her yet, and Charlie kind of knows now. To begin with, I was like, it's so stupid. Why wouldn't you tell Charlie? He doesn't look like the kind who would talk, who would run his mouth. He finds out that Jacob is a werewolf. He sees that there is this child that looks like his daughter, rapidly grows, not like any other human being, physically can feel his daughter being cold as a corpse, and he doesn't say a word. He's like, okay, I don't need to know more.
Need to know, I guess.
And I feel like this is Charlie. Volturi are very scared of knowledge about vampires becoming public and vampires being ostracized. Unless someone is running their mouth around the city and telling people about vampires, it shouldn't be that much of a problem, right? I guess the rationale here is that a Volturi can find out the thoughts of Cullens by touch, hear all the thoughts that ever were there, and they could see this thought, that there was a thought process to tell Charlie. But since Bella is a shield, he cannot read her thoughts. She can just not tell other Cullens that she did this, and she can just go and tell Charlie, and Charlie would be at peace. Somewhat. If it was not thanks to Jake, who was the only sane person in this situation, Charlie would be left without even knowing what happened to Bella, and that would be heartbreaking. But in Life and Death, Charlie knows nothing. The very last interaction that he had with Beau was Beau faking all these scenes so he can leave to Phoenix and distract Joss, and then apparently I assume that they faked that he died in a car crash. Can you imagine? Charlie would blame himself till the end of the days. He would never get over this. When Beau arrives in Charlie's house, there are all the photos of Renee, of little Beau, and Beau even comments that it's kind of sad to see how Charlie never got over this. How do you think he will be able to get over the death of his son after having such a strong fight with him? He would just constantly blame himself and think, why didn't I stop him? Just so selfish. Bella gets a lot of shit for being selfish, for not taking that much into account feelings of Jacob or feelings of Charlie. It's not that she doesn't care about other people, it's just that she feels like their feelings are inferior in comparison with her love for Edward, high school crush. Compared to Beaufort, Bella is very, very thoughtful person. Beau is so selfish. He literally sits there and watches his funeral. He sees his parents. I'm gonna read it to you. The Cullens left after the blacks. The line dwindled, and finally my parents were free. Phil took my mom away quickly. The Reverend gave them a ride. Charlie stayed alone, while the funeral home employees filled the whole inn. He didn't watch. He sat in the chair that my mom had used and stared away to the north. And the reaction of Beau to all of this, either way though, Edythe, if I hadn't been dumb enough to run off and meet the tracker, it would only have delayed things. We still end up here. You are the life I chose. The sheer lack of comprehension, how much it affected his parents' life. He watches his funerals without a lot of emotions. As Edythe, well, how did you plan it? And she said, I wanted you to grow old. And he said, haha, that would be very awkward. It would get me in trouble or in jail. Kind of laugh it off. I didn't really get why Stephenie was so determined to leave him as a one-dimensional character, the character who can only feel one emotion, which is love for Edythe. You can absolutely feel love for your partner, but at the same time feel sad for your parents and feel guilty that your decision put so much pressure and burden on them. And also you can feel some sort of remorse for the lost humanity. You can feel many emotions at the same time. I don't really understand why it should be just one thing that he allows himself to feel. He sounds like a person who accelerated through all the stages of grief instead of feeling them, even though it happens right now at this moment. You're seeing the situation, you didn't have time to process it. His interaction interactions with Edythe and his conclusions, you are the lad that I chose, it feels like he is not processing it because he is still a child, or because he never gave a shit to begin with, or because he is that stupid, or because he has no emotions, he never really cared. Either way, it's not a good look, that's what I'm saying. The second scene being meeting with werewolves, obviously Bonnie and Jules. Had to Google how common it is to have a female tribe leader for indigenous communities, and apparently it is a common occurrence. There is nothing weird here, but what is kind of weird to me is that Bonnie is not being Charlie's friend. Charlie was friends with Bonnie's late husband, and he continues being friends with Bonnie, and I was like, why did we need a buffer of a husband between them to connect? Because Charlie is a cop and Bonnie is a tribe leader. They can be friends regardless whether they had this connection, a necessary connection, or what. But now it's kind of like weird. I understand that you were friends of my late husband, but why would I want to hang out with you still, watch games, go fishing? Because apparently all females here, they have masculine interests. I wish there was an explanation why so many female characters do traditionally men's hobbies in this book. It's not wrong, it's not weird, but it's kind of unusual, especially if you again consider the realism and the fact that it all set in 2005. I bet Stephenie was thinking that she's being very progressive, but it just turned out to be a little bit unrealistic. Anyway, wolves think the treaty was broken because the whole treaty was that Cullens will not bite people who live in this territory. Technically, the treaty is broken. It doesn't really matter that he was turned somewhere else. Still, there was a human being who was living in this area, and now the human being is dead and the new vampire arrived. So the treaty was broken. Why wolves did not attack in the original saga? They didn't attack because Jacob imprinted on the monstrosity that Bella produced. But here there was no imprinting. There was not even bonding between Jacob and Beau, Jules, whatever, you know what I mean. There will be no protection happening here. Wolves can attack, but somehow Cullens were able to negotiate that they will live in 1 year, and wolves for some reason listen to it. It's kind of weird. I feel like this scene exists only to wrap up the storyline of Bonnie and Jules, and Bonnie and Jules were introduced solely to misdirect us and let us know that the story will be exactly the same as in Twilight. Otherwise, they played no value at all. They could as easily not be in the story and nothing would change. So And in the end, in the afterthought, Stephenie admits that she cheated, that it was always her fantasy, this idea of what if Edward was 5 minutes later and wasn't able to save Bella? What if Bella was turned into a vampire and didn't have to go through this long depression, the whole ordeal with Victoria, giving birth to Reykjavik? I swear, I will stop doing this. It was not funny even to begin with, which I would give her that. It was an interesting idea. Some ideas were very good in this book, not all of them. It was an interesting read.
Good luck with that.
So, overall thoughts. Few things stood out for me. Now, Stephenie claimed that the project was fun, easy, fast. I assume that I know the reason why it was so fast. Stephenie just discovered word option when you can just Command F, find the words and replace all. So she just replaced names, which she just replaced Bella with Beau and Edward with Edythe, and just speed read the entire novel and fixed in some places where it was just too awkward. She says that originally she was planning to write 1-2 chapters, and I just assumed that one of those chapters would be a Port Angeles chapter, just because this is one of the most well thought changes that she made to the story. So it shows that it was just planned for 1 or 2 chapters. The deeper you go into reimagining the whole storyline with gender swaps, the more problems you see and the more cringy and unrealistic it becomes. She somehow half-assed gender swap. If I understood correctly, the whole idea was to show the love between a vampire boy and human girl is in no way different from the love between vampire girl and human boy. It will be absolutely the same. So if you swap genders just for 2 main characters, why would you need swap genders for everyone else? Let's start with werewolves. I feel like Billy and Jacob could remain Billy and Jacob and not become Bonnie and Jules, and nothing would change at all. As far as I remember, Jacob develops stronger feelings for Bella in New Moon, And further on, he has somewhat of a crush on Bella in the Twilight, but he's still too young, and Bella already had a boyfriend. So like, he doesn't really, and they don't interact much. He doesn't have that strong of a feeling, so you can just omit them if you are not planning to write storyline further and you're not planning to develop their relationship. He could just say Jacob, and even if he had some sort of a crush, he still can have a crush on a boy. Or what? Make it Jacob bisexual or gay would be much more unrealistic than making him a werewolf or falling in love with a newborn infant, right? Yeah, we don't want to be weird. Cullens could all remain the same gender that they were. All of them. Except for Edythe, if you want. And I can't understand why she was where she was coming from because of Rosalie, right? Because Rosalie, she was turned as a partner for Edward, but he didn't like her as a partner, or she didn't like him back. I know there is a plot point that there is some sort of rivalry, animosity between Rosalie and Bella, and Bella assumes it is because Rosalie is jealous of Edward, which is not the case. Even though Rosalie has some pettiness that Edward chose Bella and he never chose Rosalie. She has some pettiness because she is very proud and vain person, but she has much more serious reasons to be afraid of Bella, because first of all, Bella puts everyone in grave danger, the whole entire family, just by knowing about their secret and mingling with them. Second of all, she would never choose this life if she had a choice. It's very important for her because more than anything in this world, she want to be a mother. And the fact that Bella has this ability and so recklessly is going to give it up, that creates tension. In New Moon, they kind of start to get better because she sees how much it affects Edward to be parted from Bella, how he is fully willing to end it all just because he cannot be with Bella, just because he thinks that Bella is gone. And she also sees how Bella is ready to sacrifice her own life and sacrifice everything and go to save Edward. And they become close enough only when Bella becomes pregnant with the abomination. Rosalie helps her with that. In this book, it's not gonna happen. They're not gonna bond. Moreover, Royal cannot be a mother. He doesn't have this desire, so he would not be jealous of Bella for being a human being. Volturi finds out, she puts them in danger. Yes, he puts him in danger. Whatever, people in wigs. So what Stephenie could have done, she could just leave everyone the genders that they initially were. She could omit plot point when she tried to turn Rosalie into a vampire just so she could present it as a female gift for Edward, because it was weird to begin with. She could just put it the situation that Rosalie was about to die and Carlisle tried to save her, so now he has two daughters. So there were never a romantic relationship there. And Rosalie can have some animosity towards Beau just because, yes, she is jealous of him being a human being. She is just being jealous of him having a choice that she was robbed of. So you can absolutely leave it there, and you don't really need to gender swap them and create this weird, grotesque characters. But if we even focus on main characters, on Edythe and Beau, Stephenie has been a little bit sneaky here because she mentioned that she changed some personality traits of Beau just because he's a boy, and he never mentions that she also changed Edythe a little bit. She said that Beau is not that angry as Bella, and I don't really remember Bella being angry. Maybe slightly more irritable, yes, but not angry. And Stephenie didn't mention that Edythe apparently was also developing slightly different than Edward, because oh boy, she is angry. She's so snarky, and she's so snappy, and she's so aggressive and assertive. When you think about Edward, as I've already mentioned, when he was growing up, it was very common for a man to be more controlling and be more assertive and be more dominant, be more in charge. Whenever he demonstrated this traits, you can give him the benefit of doubt that this is just, he's a product of his environment. With Edythe, you cannot give her this benefit of a doubt because she was not a man when she was a human being a century ago. All the traits that she demonstrates when she is being controlling, aggressive, assertive, pushy, it's all her personality traits, and it's not a good look. She doesn't look very likable, that's all that I'm gonna say. She's kind of unpleasant to be around. Now, Stephenie really left left the personalities as they were, if Edythe was really like Edward and Beaufort was really like Bella, just like them, then there will be no storyline. Then Edythe would be careful, soft-spoken, very shy, feeling that it's improper to pursue a relationship with a boy. She would not make a first move. And if Beaufort was just like Bella, he would be angry, he would have low self-esteem, he would take one look at Edythe, he would think that she is too good for him. There is all the attempts to pursue her is futile, and he would never talk to her again. So she would be too shy to speak to him, and he would be too self-conscious to even assume that he might have a chance with her. Honestly, I would argue that the whole storyline happened precisely because characters were the genders that they were initially assigned with. I'm not quite sure that Stephenie won the battle against the argument that if roles were reversed, nothing would change. But then again, she chose this battle herself, no one forced her. Kind of odd that in order to portray female characters as heroes, you need to make them basically male characters wearing wigs. That's kind of weird. I believe that Beau suffers from the same problems that Bella suffers and was criticized for. First of all, his bland personality. He just didn't have time to develop one. And even though he says that his mother says about him that he's an old soul, he's like a middle-aged man, it's telling, not showing. And the number one rule for writers and directors that you do not tell, you show us, so we can come to these conclusions. And why he needs to tell us that, because it doesn't show. He acts like a 13-year-old boy. So yeah, none of his actions speaks fully developed frontal lobe because it's not developed yet. And he didn't even have a chance to develop his own personality. Like, like Bella had this chance in the New Moon when she was shortly separated from Edward, and she at least had a chance to find out what she likes, what she doesn't like. And he will never have this option. I feel like there was a missed opportunity because we had such an amazing opportunity to revisit the world, to rewrite the storyline, to reimagine it, just leave all this silly, distracting gender swapping for non-essential characters and just focus fully on our two main characters and make them more complex, deeper, likable, believable, relatable. You can make a boy, not a male version of Bella, boy with his own set of interests, with his own personality traits. You can make him super charismatic, a sunshine in a human form, make him the soul of the company, make him very good son, make him a good friend, make him really fit into society so he will have something to lose, something that he gives up for his love, and make Edythe more soft-spoken, a product of her time, shy and careful and afraid to reach out for her love, but being unable to fight this love for this sunshine. Or you can completely go in completely different direction. You can stick with this assertive type of a femme fatale that you created for Edythe. Make her soulless. She sees Beau and she wants him to become one of them. She wants him to become her partner, and she doesn't really care about his humanity, and he is so gullible and he wants her so much that he cannot just say no because he's so soft-spoken. You can go both of this way, and I feel like she tried to combine both of them, both of these ideas. It became a hybrid, and Stephenie is traditionally not very good with hybrids. Book feels like a draft, like a Wattpad fanfiction, which says a lot when we're talking about Twilight. Twilight, to begin with, is not the absolute best type of literature that you can read. It's already kind of feels like a fanfiction. This one is specifically reads like a fanfiction. It needs a lot and a lot and a lot of editing. It feels like lazy writing to publish it this way. In general, I get why it flew under my radar, why I didn't know about this book. It's not that good, and I feel like Twilight fandom in general agrees with me that it's not that memorable and it doesn't deserve the same place in our hearts as the whole Twilight saga. It was definitely an experience, but I'm not fully convinced that I will be revisiting this. I feel like I've read it once and probably I will never read it again. I feel bad saying that. Maybe the additional factor for all of this is that Twilight holds this element of nostalgia for me because I remember how I was reading it for the first time when I was 18. This is very new to me, that it has no nostalgia, it just cringe. Also, while I was talking about it, I just looked again at my deluxe edition and I just realized that it includes 5th anniversary and 15th anniversary, but it doesn't have, it should be in the middle. It's a 10th anniversary show, so it definitely should be included in this deluxe edition. In fact, that it was such a flop that it was not even included in the Wall of Fame. They're like, we don't know her. She's not with us. I guess I need to say something good because I don't want to be a negative Nancy here, right? Not gonna lie, I liked Beau personality-wise much more than I liked Bella, just because he is less cringy in my opinion, because Bella was a moment back in 2000s. Nowadays, it feels cringe. It feels very much pick me and very much not like other girls, and it's kind of boring. So Beau is being much happier person. It just reads better to me, and I sympathize with him much more than with Bella. Also, I really like the fact that he was turned into a vampire in the first book. It was an interesting plot twist because I'm not gonna lie, I also had this ideas when I was reading Twilight for the first time. I was expecting Edward to turn Bella into a vampire in the end. It is a cool idea in my opinion, but I really hated the ending where we are not telling Charlie, because I am not Team Edward and Team Jacob. I am already at the age when I'm Team Charlie. You know what I mean. Charlie, he was the only person who loved you. Remember this scene from the New Moon when Jacob tries to remember at least someone else who likes Bella? He says, you lied to everyone. Charlie.
You've been lying to everyone. Charlie?
And he cannot think about anyone else. He was even putting himself into this category. There are people in your life, Charlie, that's all. Oh man, I hope I didn't turn out too negative. Literature is supposed to stir something in your soul, and this book definitely stirred something in my soul. Stirred enough for me to set up the camera, get the microphone, and recording the video, rambling for a few hours, and I'm sure editing the video for another few hours. So that's a result. For so many people, these books are such an important cultural phenomenon. Honestly, I really love Twilight. I believe it's an important piece of modern literature. It definitely impacted modern literature, more specifically young adult literature. It affected the entire generation of people. It still affects young people till now, 20 years later. It is a cultural phenomenon that burst its own cultural phenomenon, memes, so many things, so many references to Twilight's tidal wave effect that Twilight caused. So it's no wonder that we want to go back and back and back to this universe, and we want Stephenie to write more books about it. I know for myself that I will buy any books that Stephenie will write. Even if it's about Renesmee, I will buy it and I will read it. I'm not very proud of that. Okay, I let this out of my system. I'm very, very happy that I was able to yap for so long. Now I will go back to reading New Moon. Thank you all for watching, for sticking for so long. I'll see you next time.